Luma hovered at the very edge of the star cluster. Her light was a faint, rhythmic pulse, a steady heartbeat against the velvet dark. Beside her, Orion flared. He burned with a blinding, arrogant brilliance that pushed back the shadows and forced the surrounding space to recoil. He pulsed in sharp, jagged rhythms, a display of raw, unchecked power. "Look at you," Orion scoffed, his voice vibrating through the ether. "You barely cast a shadow. You are a flicker in a graveyard." Luma did not answer. She tucked her glow inward, pulling her edges tight until she blurred into the void. She refused to flare back. She simply watched the distant, sleeping world below, ignoring the heat radiating from his presence. Orion pulsed again, a violent flare of white light that washed out everything. He waited for a reaction, but Luma remained silent. Luma stayed still, a quiet point of persistence in the cold, watching the world below wait for a dawn that felt increasingly distant. The sky shuddered. It was not a sound, but a physical jolt that rippled through the fabric of the cluster. Orion's arrogant flare snapped, the light dying instantly like a candle wick plunged into water. He flickered, his edges turning a jagged, bruised gray. Vega, once a steady beacon, dimmed until it was nothing more than a smudge of charcoal. One by one, the neighboring stars blinked out. The darkness was not empty. It was heavy, pressing inward with a cold, suffocating weight. The moon, usually a sharp silver anchor in the night, looked hollow. Its surface had turned pale, its glow leaching away. The moon drifted closer, its voice trembling through the ether. "The heart of light has gone cold," it whispered. "Without it, the sky will be nothing but an empty grave." Orion retreated, his brilliant light reduced to a frantic, stuttering spark. The cluster was dissolving. The darkness reached out, hungry and absolute, and the stars that remained began to tremble. Orion did not look back. He pulsed with a frantic, erratic rhythm, his light shrinking until he was little more than a dying ember. He drifted away from the center, his movements jagged and aimless, seeking the safety of the furthest reaches. The other stars followed his lead, scattering into the dark like dust caught in a draft. Luma stepped forward. She did not glance at the retreating lights or the stars that had already surrendered to the gloom. She moved toward the absolute center of the void, her small, steady glow cutting a clean path through the encroaching shadow. The silence of the abyss was absolute, but she did not falter. She reached the spot where the light had once burned brightest, her presence a tiny, defiant anchor in the emptiness. The moon drifted down, its silver surface scarred by the encroaching dark. It hovered before her, its light flickering, with the effort of remaining visible. It pressed a single, cold sliver of starlight into her palm. The sliver hummed against her skin, a sharp, rhythmic vibration that pulsed in time with her own core. "Take this," the moon whispered, its voice thin and strained. "It will show you the path, but it cannot carry you." Luma closed her fingers around the sliver. Luma fell. The stars above blurred into streaks of dying light, then vanished entirely as she punched through the cloud layer. Gravity here felt different, pulling at her with a thick, viscous resistance. She plummeted, her small glow trailing behind her like a fraying thread of silk. The air grew dense, heavy with the metallic tang of ozone. She hit the ground of the sky forest with a jarring impact that sent ripples through the soil. She stood up, her light casting long, distorted shadows against the trunks of trees made of solidified mist. These trees did not sway. They groaned, a low, grinding sound of friction that vibrated through the soles of her feet. Every breath she took tasted of static, sharp and electric, stinging her throat. The forest was a labyrinth of shifting gray vapor. She took a step, and the ground beneath her shifted, the mist coiling around her ankles like grasping fingers. She held her light steady, but the forest seemed to feed on the glow. She looked ahead into the haze, where the air hummed with tension. The mist ahead tore open. A massive shape coalesced from the storm-heavy air, towering over the clearing like a mountain of shifting vapor. It had no fixed form, only a swirling, chaotic density that pulsed with the same static charge as the trees. 2 points of light ignited within the cloud, twin bolts of jagged, white-hot lightning that locked onto Luma. The ground beneath her feet fractured, spider-webbing outward as the creature moved. It let out a sound like a collapsing glacier. "A spark dares to tread here?" the creature roared. It surged forward, its breath washing over her in a wave of freezing ozone. Luma did not move. She simply held her small, steady light forward. "The sky is dying," she said. "I am here to relight the heart." The creature leaned down, searching her for a trace of ambition or pride. Finding only quiet resolve, it slowly retracted its mass. "Proceed," it rumbled. "But the shadows feed on doubt. Be careful what you reflect." Luma moved deeper into the forest until the ground leveled out into a slick obsidian bank. Before her lay the river of reflections, a slow-moving channel of liquid shadow that mirrored not her form, but her fears. She knelt, her light casting a pale, shivering glow onto the surface. The water rippled, and suddenly she saw herself as a child, small and overlooked, huddled in the vast, uncaring dark. The reflection shifted. She saw the stars of the cluster, their light cold and sharp, laughing at her dimness. The water hissed, 1,000 tiny bubbles popping against the bank. "Why bother?" the current gurgled. "You are nothing compared to them. You are a flicker in a void that wants you gone." Luma watched her reflection waver, her own light dimming in sympathy with the taunts. She reached out, her fingers hovering inches above the freezing surface. The water surged upward, trying to pull her in. She did not pull back. She pressed her palm flat against the dark current. "I am not here to be the brightest," she whispered. "I am here to be the light that remains." The water stilled instantly. Her reflection solidified, burning with a deep, calm, golden intensity. Luma stepped into the center of the clearing. The air here was heavy, thick with the scent of stagnant time and decaying starlight. In the middle lay the heart of light, a jagged crystal once brilliant, now choked by a suffocating web of oily, shifting shadows. As she approached, the darkness did not wait. It surged outward like a tide of black ink, coiling around her ankles with a freezing, viscous grip. She tried to pull away, but the ground beneath her had turned to sludge, pulling her down into the mire. The shadows rose higher, wrapping around her waist and shoulders, their touch cold enough to numb her core. 1,000 overlapping voices hissed from the gloom, vibrating against her skin. "You are too small," they whispered. Luma felt her golden glow begin to stutter, the light pressed thin by the weight of the encroaching dark. The shadows tightened. The darkness surged again, rising to cover her face, plunging her into a suffocating, absolute void. She was pinned, her light fading. Pinned in the absolute dark, Luma did not struggle against the pressure. Instead, she closed her eyes and began to hum. It was a low, steady frequency, a vibration that started in her chest and pushed outward against the oily coils. The shadows shuddered. Her light, once a fading spark, began to pulse in rhythm with the sound. She poured every ounce of her resolve into the crystal beneath her, feeding it the warmth of her own conviction. The shadows shrieked, a high-pitched, tearing sound, as the golden frequency sliced through their viscous grip. They withered, turning to fine, gray ash that drifted away into the void. The crystal pulsed once, a deep, resonant thrum that shook the forest floor. Then, it erupted. A blinding, golden dawn tore through the clearing, vaporizing the last of the gloom. The light surged upward like a tidal wave of fire, tearing through the mist trees, piercing the heavy clouds, and rushing back into the heavens. Above, the stars ignited in a cascading chain reaction. The darkness was ripped apart, replaced by a brilliant, sweeping clarity that reclaimed the sky. The golden surge carried Luma back, her light trailing behind her like a comet of pure intent. As she drifted into the star cluster, the atmosphere shifted. The stars were no longer flickering in isolation. They pulsed in unison, a rhythmic, steady heartbeat that spanned the galaxy. Orion hung in his usual place, but his blinding, arrogant glare had softened. He did not scoff. He did not pulse with jagged rhythm. He simply dimmed, bowing his light in a silent acknowledgement. The other stars turned, their collective glow shifting from cold, distant points to a welcoming, radiant circle. Luma moved into the center. She did not flare to compete. She did not need to. Her light was a steady, golden hum. She was no longer just a star among many. She was the heart star, the gravity that kept the darkness at bay. The sky felt different now, solid, connected, and alive. If you ever find yourself standing in the shadows, feeling small, or doubting your own reach, remember the path through the sky forest. Remember the silence of the void. Even the tiniest star has the power to light up the whole sky. You do not need to be the brightest to be the one that remains.